I want you to tell me your opinion. And you're so wrong on every account, but you're so sincere and honorable in the way you discuss the issues that we allow for you to be wrong about on this show every single day. You know I'm joking around here. I enjoy the conversations, and I think you do as well. But we've had this narrative, Scott, for a long, long time. And the narrative has been, in my humble opinion, to explain away the election of Donald Trump. It had to be Russia. It had to be something to do with Facebook and this analytic firm. It couldn't have been the American public voting for somebody so ridiculously unprepared to hold the highest land or highest office in the land. And then I read a Monmouth poll this morning. And Monmouth is one of the few polls that Nate Silver at 538 give a gold star rating. Nate Silver says these guys do serious polling. I mean, they're credible people. They're not always right. Polling is inexact. You accept that. I accept that. But they do a good job. But the polling that came out of Monmouth yesterday says 74% believe that there is a deep state, a bunch of unelected bureaucrats who basically work and massage and maneuver the government to their advantage. The public be damned. It's one place that Monmouth was surprised because it's not one-sided in relation to Republicans and Democrats. There's a high percentage of Republicans who believe in this deep state. There's a high percentage of Democrats who believe in this deep state. Why not just accept the fact, Scott, instead of trying to explain away the election of Trump, why not just accept the fact that maybe the American public had woken up and come to realize how people were advantaging themselves at our American democracy at the expense of a bunch of other people? Why couldn't it just be something as simple as that?
Well, I think that does play a part in it. This growing the credibility gap, which has been around since at least the late 60s, early 70s, the belief that you can't trust your elected officials, the belief that politicians are there to be bought and sold, that they'll say whatever they have to say in order to get elected and reelected. There was, I think, that growing feeling that you just can't trust these people, and that every time we have an election where we think we're going to get a new crop of individuals in office who will make changes, whether it be the Watergate babies of the 1974 or the Republican Revolution of 1996, that these people become part of the establishment, quote unquote, and just join the team. And so I think there was that frustration there that Trump was able to tap into. We also to put into account the fact that Hillary Clinton did not run the best of campaigns. That certainly played a role as well. And so I think that there are those people who are having some difficulty understanding why and how this could have happened, particularly given that every poll except for, I think it was the USC poll, had Trump losing that election. So I think there were some deeper issues here. But there also is this concern out there that if indeed the ability to mold opinion by using mold opinion from the outside, that our political system is endangered by outside sources, in this case foreign sources, it does raise alarm bells. And I think it's something that absolutely has to be looked at for the integrity of our political system. Okay, you mentioned the distrust the American public have in their elected officials. I mean, if you look at numbers, people don't like their politicians very much. They like theirs, but collectively they don't care much for the group. But when I say deep state, and I talk about unelected bureaucrats, what comes to your mind? What do you believe the deep state is? If there is indeed a deep state, who are they as far as you're concerned? Well, that's a tough question because the idea of a deep state runs into conspiracy theory, that there's this group of people behind the scenes who are actually pulling all the strings, whether they be career bureaucrats or members of the armed forces who somehow have gotten the ears of the military-industrial complex, if you will, who have gotten the ears of politicians in Washington, D.C., and that these are the real power brokers. And so the President of the United States really is not that powerful if you think about it. The Secretary of State's not that powerful. The Secretary of Defense isn't that powerful. That it's these people behind the scenes who pull the strings, or the ones who are powerful. Wall Street, the career bureaucrats. And I can understand where this idea comes from, given that if we look at members of Congress, many of them are millionaires who have ties to millionaires, the amount of money you have to have just to get elected and reelected. I can see where it comes from. But it worries me that people are willing to accept the idea that their elected officials lack power. I think they have power. I think it's how they wield it, which is the issue.
Is a lot of the problem from your perspective, and I think you're going to agree with me here. I don't know that we agree how to get to a solution, but is a lot of the problem the amount of money it takes now and where that money comes from to be successful in American politics?
I think part of the problem, but I've talked in the show what I think are a couple of good solutions. One is to get rid of gerrymandering, and I was very pleased to see the Supreme Court's decision regarding this case in Pennsylvania. I think we have to get rid of Citizens United. And another idea that's, sorry?
Are you for public financing of presidential campaigns?
I think that'd be a good way to go, yes. Restrict the financing to the point so that way you don't have this big money flowing in there and have these billion-dollar campaigns. I would also be willing to support the idea of limiting the length of a campaign. That way you don't have these members of Congress, especially in the House, who the moment they're elected, they're immediately working on their reelection. I would like to see them focus more on their constituents and what their constituents want, as opposed to what I have to do now to get elected 2 years from now.
I never thought I'd go down this road, but I've almost gotten to the point now that I am in your camp with some level of campaign finance reform that would include the public financing of presidential campaigns, because once again, we've trusted the system to properly allocate the funds needed to, in other words, we've trusted I guess in some way, shape, or form, the free market to run campaigns. In other words, if Exxon has more money than BP, then Exxon spends more money and they expect more in return. I think I've come around to the fact that unless we revisit campaigns the way we fund campaigns, we're not going to stop the effect and influence money has on policy. And normally the people that give the enormous amounts of money get the policies they want, whether they're the best interest of the American public or not. That's kind of against my philosophical belief, but I think incrementally I'm beginning to understand that may be the only way we clean up the money in politics.
I would like to point out to your listeners, this is an historic moment here. Ken Ard has said the liberal professor is correct. So
I'm not saying you're correct. I'm saying I'm beginning to warm to the idea. Yeah. And I guess the level of cynicism is what drives me there. And I've always been fairly pragmatic in most of my political views. And the pragmatist tells me you're not going to stop these big boys from spending so much money. What Citizens United did, and I understand the free speech component. I think you clearly understand the Roberts Court and why they did that. But I think when you back up a half step and you allow for shadowy figures and shadowy enterprises to influence elections in such a profound way, it's not good for democracy.
And even assuming that these politicians are not being influenced by the money, it's the perception, it's the way it looks that is really disconcerting.
Well, and as a candidate, I've just always been opposed to any ad that runs in support of my campaign or opposition of my opponent that I don't have to say, I'm Ken Ard and I approve this message. Mm-hmm. I just think there's got to be some ownership there. And with Citizens United, it allows for the Soroses of the world and the Koch brothers of the world to basically drive an agenda and a particular candidate. And the candidate can say, well, I don't know why they said he had 8 girlfriends, 2 boyfriends, and, has cheated on his wife every day except Sunday. But I think there's got to be some ownership of the campaigns. And I'd like to see us go back to some model that included the candidate, the person with his name or her name on the sign saying, I'm candidate X and I approved this message. Mm-hmm. Today, on the left, you got the Soros group doing the dirty work for you. On the right, you got the Koch brothers doing a lot of the dirty work. I want to go back to something we were talking about, the deep state. I'd be very interested in your opinion, because despite how wrong you are on the major issues of our time, I've always appreciated the amount of integrity that you have and believe our government should provide to the American public. I don't think you'll question whether or not Andy McCabe or Jim Comey did something that was inconsistent with the truth. I'm going to hesitate to call either one a liar today. But I want to hear your take. When we hear the McCabe statement, and he clearly says, now he says interaction, other than the leak. I mean, the word interaction is there for a reason, because he knows leak is against the law, and there may be some legal trouble there. But McCabe says in his own statement, not Good Morning PD, not the Rush Limbaugh Show, not Fox News, Andy McCabe said, the interaction I had with the Wall Street Journal was authorized and known and approved by the director. The director at the time was Jim Comey. Jim Comey in May of 17, under oath, said, when asked by Chuck Grassley, have you ever leaked to the media? No. Have you ever authorized a subordinate in your agency to leak to the media? His words were never. No and never. Is somebody being dishonest?
I think it's something we have to look into. And here's what I would propose, and I'm going to say this on the air. I would propose a quid pro quo here. I have said on the radio that I believe that transparency is needed here. I think what Trump has done with regard to McCabe was very wrong the way he did it. I think he's also using it to deflect attention from the Russia campaign. But in the name of transparency, I would be more than willing to support the idea of James Comey coming back before members of Congress to testify whether, in fact, what he said and how truthful he was in what he said, if the Trump people on their side are prepared to be more transparent. This is what I've been calling for as well, because the Republicans have been talking about transparency. I want to see Trump's visitor logs released. I want to see the FISA court warrant released, which the president can do. I want to see Trump's taxes released. I want the Republicans to be transparent. I want them to do exactly what they say they've been doing all along.
So you're saying that this is a partisan issue?
It's being used as a partisan issue.
Okay, but I'm going to challenge you here now. What did Trump do to McCabe?
He fired McCabe at 26 hours before McCabe was to retire,
No.
And he's using it to deflect attention.
The Inspector General recommended to the Office of Professional Responsibility a firing. And Jeff Sessions did what? He accepted the recommendation of the Inspector General, who, as a conduit in the FBI, utilized the Office of Professional Responsibility. That is about as cut and dry as you. Trump did not fire Andy McCabe. Now, Trump celebrated via a tweet the firing of Andy McCabe.
Okay.
But the narrative that's out there today that Trump fired McCabe is just absolutely untrue, Scott.
Wait a minute here. Let's look at the timing here. Let's look at Trump's tweets here. And let's look at Sessions' role in all of this.
So do you disagree with the IG referred to the Office of Professional Responsibility?
I accept the IG.
They made a recommendation to AG Jeff Sessions, and AG Jeff Sessions acted upon that recommendation.
This IG report actually began before Trump took office, began in the Obama administration. I accept
David
the
Horowitz
IG report.
Yes. The IG, who was he appointed by?
By Obama. And I would accept the IG report. I will accept the fact that what it recommended. What I find interesting are, number one, the timing of it all. Well, number two, the way that Trump pronounced it. But number three, something else that should be looked into here. Jeff Sessions said he would recuse himself from the Russia investigation. He may have violated that by firing McCabe. I think that has to be looked into as well.